What's going on, everybody? Wilson here, your spiritual hype man. I hope everybody's having a great day. And if you're not, just remember it's the thoughts in our head. We just need to change them or tell them to shut the fuck up and keep rolling. Like, that was a pattern interrupt. That's not what you typically say. Right. We just got to change your thoughts, shut them down, go do something physical, put some music on. And just remember, it's all what we're perceiving in our heads. And right now, there's so many things in my head that I want to discuss. But I do want to talk about, I think where I'm going to start is I'm going to talk about what we did leading up into the new year from, Christmas Eve all the way to leading up to the new year. And then after the new year, it's been a great couple of days so far. So, and I think the big picture, there's a couple things I want to talk about, but I guess let's go macro level. On the macro level of things, there's a couple situations that happened. So we went out to Jersey. In a couple situations where I got a chance to reflect on, to really think about, hey, how can I have made a better decision or filtered my emotions a little better or acted on this a little differently based on that. Now, overall, I had a really great time. It was actually a really, really great time hanging with my family. I haven't gotten a chance to do that in a while as it came to just everybody together all at the same time. And so it was a pretty amazing feat that we were out there for 7 days, and it was, there were not that I don't want to say arguments, but, typically it ends up where somebody's leaving and nobody's talking to somebody for a couple months. And I would say that probably like more a couple years ago, right? Like it's been a lot better, but this has been the first time that like my nuclear family and I got a chance to hang out. It was an amazing experience. And so so I guess the macro level situations that I became aware of, it was one, understanding, who am I dealing with in this situation? Like, who's the person in front of me? Where are they at consciously, in terms of their awareness, their growth, their ability to comprehend certain communication factors or skills, or even just, having dialogue in terms of what's their initial response, and can they be aware or can they become aware of how they're actually feeling, and then understand that like how they're feeling is connected to like how they're acting, and then, is that the best thing for the situation? So that was one. And then the other thought was, let's see, I guess, how do you communicate that? What was one of them? It's like, okay, if I know this, how do I communicate that to somebody that doesn't yet know that, or isn't as aware yet, or isn't as conscious, or, can't see that macro level of things? How do I then try to approach that and then communicate that with them? And again, it's different for everybody. It's going to be different for everybody based on who you have in front of you and who you are and where your level of awareness and practice and repetition of like, figuring these things out. But it's definitely, I feel like reflecting and then questioning these things and then providing these as prompts or just, it's the vocabulary word I've used, prompts, for the longest. So it's these prompts that will help you, or these thoughts in your head that will help you then ask these questions, reflect on them, identify, connect, and then decide to do something different. And then what else I got? And I think in parallel to that, it's just, is the same thing of just understanding that you may have been in that situation at some point, right? You may have those thought processes. You may have thought in that manner, decided on that manner, filtered your emotions in that manner back way when, and also acted that way, or also decided to do something or act, made a decision in that manner, right? So that was a lot that I was able to reinforce the thought process of figuring out, like very simply, who am I in this situation? Who's the person in front of me in this situation? where am I right now, consciously and aware in terms of how I'm feeling within the situation, and then what are going to be my potential actions moving forward based on the person that's in front of me. And then understanding the person in front of you, prospectively, like giving yourself that moment of who is this person, where are they, and in their awareness, in their ability to be as conscious in terms of fill in the blank situation. That's it. You're welcome. That was the golden nugget. I'll see you guys again on the next one. And until you do, and don't remember nothing. And don't. So obviously that won't be the last one, but that would have been a funny one if I could have pulled that one off. But what are you gonna do? Hopefully there's nothing wrong neurologically with me, and if there is, you guys let me know. That's funny. So and then obviously everything that you deal with, going like the travel side of going to the airport, which actually wasn't too bad. We flew into Atlantic City, which was great, a smaller airport, and then my brothers were there. They picked me up. It was great to see them. That both of them picked me up. Patty and I were there. It was we actually, before we went to the airport. So we went to the airport on Christmas Eve. The night before, we packed. We hung out, and then the boys came over to just kind of like get some gift exchange, say what's up, and then we also, or I think it was Rudy, and then, so no, the boys didn't come over the night before. It was Rudy, fuck. I forgot how it happened. Actually, I do remember. The boys came over, like we went over to Nana's house. The boys were over there the day on Christmas Eve. That's how it happened. And I'm sticking to my story. And so that was a fun interaction, seeing Patty, the boys, Nana, everybody just very happy, exchanging gifts. And I was in the moment. Same thing. I didn't feel like before. I used to have the similar situations, and I would just feel this angst because of what I was holding on to in terms of what I believe that the boys are feeling or they think or etc. So I held that for a while, but this year was very much different. And I would say it does, and I would think, or it would be because of understanding my situation in terms of like what is really happening in front of me and what do I really want for others here in this situation, right? Because like in for most of, I would say, my life, yes and no, right? Because there's moments where I know I'm like, no, this needs to come first because this is what I need, right? But for most other situations outside of those situations, right, my intent is always, what is it for others in this situation? And I would say not everyone has to be that way, right? Like not everyone's is like that or feels that way, and maybe they develop into that or they don't based on different, sort of their decisions and their life paths and things that they can't control, etc. But it was a feeling that it just kind of kicked everything off. It kicked everything off, like a good reinforcement of like, yeah, this is going to be a great trip. This is awesome. Everybody's enjoying themselves. We got a chance to do Christmas with the boys, and then I also get a chance to go hang out with my nuclear family. So I get to be the kid, right? I went from seeing the kids doing what they're doing with Patty and Nana, and then going to be that kid later on. Which again, now until just now, it blows my mind if you can think that way and then connect those parallels, right? So that's exactly what it was. It was my Christmas with my parents and my brothers. And so my brothers picked me up. It was awesome. Flight was cool. Side note, flying when I was younger was much easier because I didn't think of any of these things. So it's not like I'm like I don't mind flying, right? But I'm very, very practical and aware that like we're in this like mechanical thing up in the air, and mechanical things tend at some point break and can have whatever, like any other machines, like a car. It's a car except up in the air, right? With people, and so there's always some sort of mental apprehension and mental game that I have to play with myself. And luckily, Patty's always there, hanging out with me, and she knows. But I think she felt the same way until like I shared with her like why I was feeling that way. But what are you gonna do? At the end of the day, we decided to do it. We made those actions, and then in that when I'm sitting in the chair before takeoff, that's what I go through. I'm like, well, you made your decision. You know what it was, and you know what it is. If it is what you're thinking it is, or it could be, right? Or it could be, which again is the whole, you're thinking, or you're putting this added pressure, anxiety on you on things that you have yet to know if it could be possible, but you don't know if it's going to be possible. Yeah. Okay, so so we went. That goes on. We get there. My brothers are there. Super awesome to see that they're both there. I really love those guys. Like, our relationship has always been a great relationship with each other. No matter what, right? Like, no matter what. And then they pick me up, and then they pick us up, and then I was like, Atlantic City's right there. Haven't been there in a while. Used to go there for used to go there to play poker with the college buddies back way when. And then I was like, yo, so why don't we kidnap you guys? Like, I was like, you guys want to go to Atlantic City for a little bit? And everybody was on board. We all went. We're like, we might as well make the most of this trip and go to Atlantic City and hang out, have a good time. Play little cards if they're there. So I was like, just tell Mom and Pops. You know what? I'll text them. So I told them, I was like, hey, kidnapping the boys for a couple hours. We're going to Atlantic City. So we ended up going to Atlantic City. It was fun. We played roulette. They didn't have poker where we went. We went to the Ocean. I believe it was the Ocean Casino out there. But it was a good time. So we ended up playing roulette. And then Jeff and Mark played a little blackjack. I don't want to fuck around with that. I can play it. I just need to be. I haven't played it in a while, right? So I would need to brush up on some of the bylaws. But that was fun. Everybody won some money, which was cool. I was down to my last $15, and then I was gonna hit black 17, and that brought me up a couple $100. It was like $130. It was like, we weren't out there, we just went for fun. But either way, I walked away with an extra $130. So I beat the casino. And so did my brothers. Patty was happy. She was watching the Bears game, and I think they actually won that week. So, already off the bat, things are looking really good for the week. We ended up going home, plenty of food. Mom and Pops were there. Really good stuff. They were very happy to see everybody. And again, I want to reiterate, plenty of food for sure. Because Pops loves to cook when he's out. So another special moment of this trip was Pops usually has to work on Christmas. So he's like a water plant engineer, or maintenance manager, whatever the title is. But most of the time he's working on holidays. And this time he was like, hey, I'm actually going to be off. Are you coming? And that was a big motivator, right? An influence that then my thoughts were, well, this has been we haven't done this in a while. Pops Celeste, and it also seems like Pops, would like that, based on the way he texted and how I perceived it, and so that made we went. That was the go. What else? We went rock climbing, motorcycle. Like we took out the motorcycles, which is fun. So rock climbing was a blast. From rock climbing, got a chance to hang out with Jeff. He showcased what he can do, what he's been doing, and then I was able to climb, with him, which was fun. And again, another memory. And then Patty, of course, was there hanging with us, taking some content, doing what she does, and just hanging out. So it's a memory, right? It's been a forever memory now in my head. So a couple of things. What else did we do? We went to New York. And then we rode motorcycles. So when we rode motorcycles, Mark, one of my younger brother, he was very apprehensive of me riding because he was just worried that, he didn't know how much riding experience I actually had. We've never ridden together, et cetera. So again, this was a situation where he was kind of like Mom. He was a little apprehensive, and then just kind of like very, hey man, are you sure? Or we'll do this, or it was just a moment where I just felt like, I'm like, dude, I fucking know how to ride, right? like let me just be, okay? Because you're kind of all over my shit. It's kind of what it was, right? So I figured in that moment I needed to because it was upsetting me, right? Like that's how I was feeling. So like I was like trying to be very conscious before I reacted in terms of like, yo man, what the fuck? Like leave me alone. Like I know how to fucking ride, bro. You know, like I've been riding all my life. Not really, but I've been riding, you know, for a good amount here in the FL state. And so it just took me a minute. And then when we were both outside, I didn't want to do it in the house, obviously, because my mom's always on it too. She's always like trying to figure, everybody good, everybody all right, which is great, obviously. And that's where I get some of that. It's like I just want to make sure everybody's having a good time. So we're outside, and I was like, hey Mark, let me just can I give you some feedback? Because like we had the one Jeff's bike in the garage, which Jeff was cool enough. We went to his house. Basically, the ride was from Jeff's house back to Mark's house, or where they're at, like my parents' house, where they're at, and he just like I wanted to take the bike out of the garage. He went and he's like, "Oh, I'll take it out for you." Da da da. Like that's how I perceived it, and that's when I was like, "Hey, Mark, can I just give you some feedback?" And that's where it went. And when I gave him feedback, the first thing was like his reaction was defensive, right? Like it was defensive, like, oh, all I'm trying to do is help you, and you know, and go ride. I know you want to ride, right? But you know what? Fine. You know what? I don't even want to ride anymore. That was you know basically what happened. And so I was like, Mark, like that's obviously the intent is not for this to happen, right? My intent was to share with you how I felt, my perspective in terms of like the actions that you were doing that made me feel this certain way enough to me to say something to you. I'm not saying it for you to feel like I'm bringing you down or that you're doing something wrong, or, you know, that like I'm just sharing with you these things of how I'm perceiving them and how it makes me feel. And so after I was able to communicate it in that fashion versus like, hey man, you're not letting me do my own thing, which in essence is what's happening, but I'm communicating in a way that like, I think it's the vocabulary that you choose. It's like, look, I'm just trying to share my perspective. I'm just trying to share how I feel based on the actions or the things that you're doing. And it's like the most simplest way to say it so the other person understands what's actually happening without that emotional connection to it. And I think if we get better at doing that, right, at developing these conversations at moments of, I don't like the word confrontation, but it is confrontation when two people or two opposing sides are seeing a different perspective on a similar situation, or, you know, maybe they have a different connected emotional tangible, right, connected to what we were perceiving at the same time. And so that's what was happening. And then so ultimately, like, he understood it, and then we just discussed it. We talked about it a little bit more. Like the emotion was still, you know, I feel like the emotion was still a little slightly higher than usual, right? But like not to the level where, you know, it got to. And here's another thing, like when I saw him react that way, to like later on I reflected that it was very similar to like what I've seen mom and pops act like or do in certain situations where they're like, well, you know, like one doesn't feel appreciated, which that was a feeling. And then two, it was just kind of like, I'm just going to not do X then. I'm not going to go for the bike ride. Then you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not even going to go. Like I think both my parents at some point have done things like that. And again, I'm sure other people have done that. I've done that. But in this example, this is where I see the influence come from in terms of Mark being influenced by that pattern or that way of thinking or that inherent way of making the decision to act that way when something like that happens, right? And so the only thing is just being like, who are you in that situation? Whether you are, in this case, Mark or me. I have been Mark, right? And the thought would be, who is that? Like, who's the person that can either provide that if you're not thinking that way? But again, if you're hearing this, most likely you're seeking it, and most likely you're beginning to think that way, or you do think that way. So I would say just reinforcing that and then helping others get to that level of understanding that will then make an impact. Will then make somewhat of a difference in how people's relationships grow, which ultimately is, you know, decide to act within certain situations and parameters of life. Thank you very much. So that's what I got from that one situation of, you know, of doing that. The other thing was, we went to Jeff's brewery. Like, Jeff's a master brewer where we're at, one of the breweries down there, and it's really it's an awesome place. You know, again, situation though is you're surrounded by, alcohol, and you're surrounded by, people, mostly veterans that have gone through things, and then do come drink. Some people obviously drink more than others, but there's this, influence or way of thinking, of doing and being right within that community, which is, again, same thing, just groups of people coming under some sort of similar interests, just like what we're doing, and influencing each other, or reinforcing the influence and reinforcing the actions. So my point is, Jeff is, because he's a master brewer, I would say that influences him on the amount of alcohol that he drinks or beer that he drinks. He doesn't really drink too much hard liquor, more of beer. Whereas before, he used to smoke a lot because he used to be a grower for a medical marijuana plant up in Jersey, right? So, it's all these things, and so before there used to be a lot of smoke as well, and so likewise with me, right? But then all of a sudden I've toned that down, way down from what it was. Jeff Hasley stopped, went into the Army. He's in the National Reserves. And then, but continues now to brew and drink lots of beer. And so the one night he was bartending, it was fine. It was cool. Like, there wasn't a lot, he wasn't drinking a lot. Like, I think there's things that we can, side note, there's a business episode. I'll probably talk about this in the next one, maybe at some point, but they're trying to, like, their brewery, is trying to get to a level of actually breaking even and making money. And so there's a couple things that I have feedback on for Jeff, because he's going to be a big part of that, right? Like, they're looking at him like, hey, if you can help us get there, like this, you have potential ownership, of the brewery. And so sitting there, there's, in my mind, I'm always, again, thinking of these certain things, and just, for lack of better words, people watching and then analyzing, and then more people watching and then analyzing based on certain situations, and like what the factor, like what the goal is, right? So I was prospectively looking at the big picture, as if this potential brewery could be something that Jeff, owns as a business, and then as a business, what could it be doing better? And I yet to have that conversation with Jeff, because, again, same thing like the previous thought, or the previous situation with Mark. I'm not sure if he's the person I'm looking at in this situation, and to him, I love him, I respect him. I just don't know if he's not ready to, like, either hear it in that fashion, way, or form, because I remember at some point I wasn't like that, so, which then reiterates the whole thought and concept of, who is in front of you, what is the situation, can you find a way to speak to that or communicate to that individual, to both of us, to get at the same plane and understand, like, what we're providing in terms of, like, communication, or what the information or knowledge that we're sharing is for the best of what they're trying to do with that situation, right? And so that's a side note. I look forward to sharing that with him. Hopefully, actually, maybe I'll get him on the podcast, and then I'll take him through it. That would be actually a really good idea. So that'll be a future podcast. So we'll do that. So that's a side note. But going back to being in the brewery, it was fun. It was great people. There's definitely some feedback. Jeff didn't drink a lot. Fast forward to, it was the night before coming back down to Florida. Well, we went out to the city to meet up with my cousin Paula. Now, that's a whole other episode in itself, is to her and I stopped talking for the longest. She was like my homie, right? So she's obviously my aunt's daughter, but she was my homie growing up, because she was just similar to like a Jeff, which is my middle brother, but in terms of just personality, bubbly, always happy, always great, and just somebody that I was connected to. So, and thought process. She's very smart, very conscious, very aware, very much similar, I would say, on the level that I'm on, that we're at, right? That all of us are at, but me in particular. Okay. And so that was fun. That was a whole thing. Another episode, we'll talk about that. But we went to visit her. So all of us, Patty, myself, Jeff, Mark, we all went to visit, and it was an amazing moment of being able to reconnect and getting back to that level, like finding that level of emotion where it was like, hey, this is how we, this is what it was, love you, I love you, cuz, and so that was fun. Now, let's fast forward until we went to the city when I saw the tree. One of Patty's things that she absolutely wanted to do was go see the tree, so we definitely went to go see the tree. It was all right, I mean, it was a lot of people, but again, it just depends on what your experience and what you like. For us and for me, I think it's like it needs to be much bigger and much more grandiose, or not, you know what I mean, or just not go. I know, but I was happy that we went. It was fun. Saw that. Went to the cathedral. Got a bunch of pictures, which I can't wait to share that too. Like some street photography was fun. But then we went to Flushing, Queens. There was a place doing a star. It was like a neon light show in the park, botanical garden sort of thing. And throughout that day, from once we started, like once we went to go eat somewhat brunch till that nighttime, like my brother Jeff just drank a shit ton of alcohol, like a shit ton of beer, right? So initially it was like the red drinks, whatever those are in the mornings with tomato juice, which whatever that is. Damn, I can't believe I can't think of that. But okay, so whatever. He drank a lot of that, and then just there were certain parts of like his being while having all these beers, on top of his health. Like I'm concerned about his health too, right? Because he's a bigger guy, has a lot more pounds, but younger, and just like doesn't drink enough water. Like I'm like, you don't fucking drink enough water, man. Like you got to get some water, fucking. And he's like, water's for weaklings or some shit. And he drinks beer, or like, this is my water, and then like he'll grab a beer. And I'm like, Jeff, that's not fucking water, obviously. Like you really need to filter it, because logically your organs, your liver is just filtering all this alcohol that you're doing, and at some point like your liver can fail you if you don't fucking filter it, right? Like it's very logical shit. And he's like, yeah, well, it doesn't matter here. And like chugs a beer. I'm like, Jeff, that's not fuck. So just that along the way, and then just certain demeanors in terms of how he acted. Like there were certain actions of just like coming home from like that neon place. Like there was an accident and someone was getting out of the car, and he lowered the window. He's like, that fucking sucks, or some shit like that, right? Like something like that. And that just like, I'm in the back seat. I'm just like, ugh, like what the fuck, man? Like, like why do we have to be this way? We don't have to act this way. And again, there was influence obviously in terms of alcohol, but there was where's that influence in terms of being that way coming from? And again, in those moments, I'm trying to be very conscious of like, how do I approach this? How do I say it? Like, obviously I'm not happy. It doesn't make me happy. Like, I'm not like, yeah. Like, I'm not rooting that on, So, and then it's knowing and then understanding like, hey, was I like that? Like, question mark, like, was I at that point? I know in college there were certain times that like, right, I was in a fraternity. There was ways of doing it. So I potentially think that there was moments that I probably was like that. And so again, I can understand it. It's just like seeing it and then unable to like touch base with someone until they're ready, because it may not be seeking, it may not be ready. Like you may not have gotten that one situation, which again, I don't want to put it out there, and I don't want to like, my mom would be so mad because she'd be like, don't even say it. But right, like if something happens health wise and then it's going to make him stop, like is that what you need, right? Is that for some people you do, and some people continue to do it anyway, and it is what it is. But I don't think, I think Jeff has the ability to continue, because he's an awesome individual, like they all are. Mark too, Paula, obviously Patty, my parents, they're all great people, right? There's just like, and myself included, there's just things that we're continuing to work on. But again, what I got from that situation is, one, understanding that who is the person in front of me, where are they, are they seeking something, or, for now, is this just where they are? And I learn to accept it, as long as there isn't anything in terms of like disrespect, especially towards you as the individual. Obviously, like him yelling out the window to a person that just got into an accident, I think is disrespectful. I would perceive that as disrespect, and that's one of my biggest things, which again made me not feel good or not comfortable. So that day, like I had mixed emotions of being there, and obviously Mark and Jeff were there, and they're both around the same age. Mark drank a little bit, but at the same time, it was just like, I was just like, oh man, I am, 10 years older than these guys. I do have just maybe a little bit more, and I would say, yeah, some consciousness and awareness around these certain situations in terms of what it is. But I also was that, and I also probably was in certain aspects or situations maybe worse. Um, that's and that's I think for anybody that has dealt with it or goes to family, Thanksgiving, whatever, and there's a bunch of family members, a bunch of people, like those are things that we need to, that most people go through, and that sometimes we're not as aware to really understand like the macro level of exactly what's happening, but we're very closed and like only seeing the emotional side of like these situations and actions and how people are acting, and then like a reaction to it in a way that then people are not like, when people are like, oh, family's coming for the holidays, shit's gonna be crazy and all the blah blah blah. It's like, why is that like the norm? Why is that okay? Like, shouldn't it be like, hey, family's coming in, it's gonna be fucking amazing, everybody's great, but what are you going to do other than share it? If it makes sense, share it with people and hope that it helps them, and share it with yourself, in that moment. And how can, can you be in that instant very active of thinking in that manner and then acting on it? Because it helped. Like I didn't yell at him. I came home. My mom knew that like I was somewhat like not I wasn't my normal, like, hey, what's going on, everybody? I was just like, hey, what's up? Yeah, no, it was all right. Because I was still feeling that way, right? And so I shared with her, and it's funny because, like, she, like, understood. I was like, I understand how you felt in those moments, but at the same time, it was very admirable that she's like, listen, they're just your brothers. Like, it takes time. I'm like, fuck you talking about? like like if it were me, right? And you go back into that whole psycho shit. But again, it was like, I understand. I appreciated the fact she let me share. So, and then that was it. I was like, look, I can feel upset about it. It is what it is. But and that's what it was. It took me time. Now here's my last, and I'm going to finish with this. One thing, looking back and reflecting on that Saturday night before we left, which again, we got back on the plane, the mental chess game went through and all that stuff. It was that Saturday being upset, and I was upset, like being upset of the way they were acting, in certain situations or whatever it was. There were still moments. So there's two things. There were still moments that I enjoyed myself very much. There's a picture that I took of my brothers that I can see it right now photographically in my head, and it's an amazing one. I'm glad that we were there all together, capturing those moments and being part of it. And then two, the thought of like reflecting on the fact that there was moments also throughout that day that I was upset, and I didn't. Again, I don't know. Maybe it was just meant to be that way, right? And so my initial thought was, look at how you were feeling. You could have potentially had more connection, more feeling, more positive energy with that situation with your brothers, and made the most of it, even though, at certain times in your own perspective, they're acting like, little ass kids, right? Like, like again, little fucking, I don't know, like little frat boys, right? If you want to say it, I don't know, like whatever, like fill in the blank, So those were the concepts, those were the questions, and those are what I reflected on. Like, I'm very happy that there was, and again, maybe if it was all groovy and all great, and everybody's on the same wavelength, maybe there's certain moments, like the picture, that wouldn't have as much emotional connection or relative, emotion to it, So again, those are just some thoughts to take on, and because I could have gone, and people could say, it's, don't let that affect how your last couple of hours, and that's what it was. Don't let that affect in terms of how the last couple of hours you are hanging out with your family. Like, but at the same time, it's like it was something, right? And it wasn't like it became a negative. Like, it became a negative and it destroyed the whole day. Right, if it destroyed the whole day and like I got mad and angry, because like there was a moment that I in the train I got very upset at Mark, and that was it. So there was another situation where it's like, hey, this train or this train. I was like, Mark, well, this one saves 4 minutes, so let's just go on that one. And it was like he needed to be right, and then I needed to be right, and then I just like I ended up like blowing up a little bit, and I said some shit. I was like, dude, like you can talk to that way to like your other half. You can talk to that way to mom, but don't fucking talk to that way to me, man. Like, I know what the fuck I'm doing. Also, like you don't have to like I don't have to rush in front of you. You don't have to fucking lead the way all the time. Is how I felt, and that's how I said it. So same thing, like there was these moments of looking back and like reflecting on it and just saying, well, how can that have been better? Who's in front of me? And that's just exactly what we talked about in the front. This has been probably one of the longest ones ever. But I wanted to share with you the entire perspective, the entire week outside of these certain situations in terms of what we were thinking, how I reflected what we're developing on, and just how we're moving forward. So I appreciate you for listening. 35 minutes, go crush it. Go do whatever you got to do. Appreciate your family. Give them a call. Tell them that you love them. I still talk to him. I talked to him today. Like, everything's great. I just know that. I guess the last question is, can you be the influence? Can I do something more? Can I call them? Can I call Jeff on a weekly and have more of a presence of being an influence to him, to help him, get there, right? About maybe his health, maybe drinking, and then just certain things or certain actions, in terms of just his demeanor or how he's characterized. But that might just be him, and he's another person that has very good intentions. We all do. So I hope that for everybody. I hope that for you. Call your family. Go crush it. It's a new year, baby. New you, new situation. It's not really a new you, more of a more improved, aware, conscious you. New year, more improved, aware, conscious you. That one's going to go next on the T-shirt. That's a shameless T-shirt plug. NCUID.com, baby. Sponsored by NCUID. Have a great day. Go crush it. I'll talk to you guys again on the next one. And peace. Don't forget, nothing changes until you do.